Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. The world is sleepwalking into the grip of a third world war, and it's not Islam that's to blame, it's the unjust actions of world leaders motivated by money and power. That was the resounding message from last week's National Peace Symposium in the UK. His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, spoke to some 600 people, NGOs, faith leaders, politicians, aid workers and members of the general public. It's a message of peace and unity that he's been repeating at this annual event for 19 years. But has anyone been listening? The same day, thousands of people marched in an anti-Islam rally in London organised by far-right activist Tommy Robinson. Emboldened by recent local election gains by far-right party Reform UK, Robinson and his followers are calling for Islam to be removed from the country. What does all of this mean for the future of Muslims in the UK, the peace of the world at large, and how can faith, media and charity groups counter such division and hatred? Joining us is Nasser Khan Sahab, Deputy National President of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the UK, and also alongside him, Amer Safir Sahab, Editor of the Review of Religions magazine. But before we come to them, let's first take a look at some of the highlights from His Holiness's address last weekend.
It is therefore fair to ask if there is any benefit to holding this event. Nevertheless, my response is that Islam teaches us to strive relentlessly for good and never give up. Many people seek to blame Islam and claim it to be the cause of the world's disorder. Such allegations, amplified by mainstream and social media, are utterly false and extremely harmful. Rather than scapegoating Islam or any other religion, what the world urgently needs is for people to unite with a common purpose: the establishment of peace and harmony. Global disorder is driven by the desire of the rich and powerful to fulfill their vested interests and maintain their dominance over others. Far from being a source of conflict, Islam's teachings offer a timeless path towards peace.
So very powerful words by His Holiness just last weekend. Nasser Khan Sahab, I just want to start with you. These peace symposiums have been going on for almost 2 decades. Why did they originally start and how have they progressed since?
The history of the Peace Symposium dates back to the opening of this mosque to some extent, because for us, the Battle of Two Mosque here in Morden was opened in October 2003, and for us, although as a community, it was a momentous event. It was the biggest mosque in Europe at the time, and therefore it attracted a lot of media attention. And we weren't used to that kind of media attention being such a small community. And we had media from around the world flocking on the day. They say that if you want coverage of the news, then it has to be a quiet world at the time. And it was a very quiet world in October 2003, on the 3rd of October. And so we had a very keen interest from media from around the world. And so we were taken back by the response. And the inauguration evening took another kind of importance, because it became an event for His Holiness to address the world in a way, because the world media was here to hear what His Holiness had to say about this big, beautiful mosque opening in the heart of Europe at the time soon after 9/11. And therefore the interest was there, and His Holiness covered the event in such a way. His keynote speech was very clear and very timely in that sense, because he reached out to the world to say, actually, religion should be a source of peace for the world. And rather, it has become, the media is portraying it as a source of war and unrest. And so the 2003 inauguration was a kind of, for us, a wake-up call that this is actually something that attracts media attention. And the politicians, the academics showed a keen interest in attending. And so the following year, His Holiness said, let's do this again. And this time we call it a Peace Symposium. And that's how it was born.
All right. So it's Hazur's idea?
Yeah, absolutely 100% his idea.
And you mentioned that, at the time, there's a lot of media attention. Has that remained consistent, or is the media not as interested? And we're going to go into this a bit right now, but how have you found it?
Well, media is very fickle, isn't it? They're really looking at the days when they can cover news in a sensational way. And so the sensationalism around the mosque opening was obviously there because it's a big mosque opening in the heart of Europe. Subsequent to that, obviously events happened. The 7/7 bombings happened. Attacks in Afghanistan, the wars in the Middle East. So each time something like that happened, the Muslim topic goes up in the agenda, kind of thing. So there's always been some interest, rather, and we've always had that connection with the media. They want to come to Battle of Fateh, to the peace conference, to see if something new is going to be said by His Holiness that they can then sensationalize.
Yeah.
So yes, the interest has been consistent, I think, throughout that period.
Okay, Amer Sahab, this message of Hazur for almost 2 decades, Hazur has been repeating the same message of peace. In the early days when, as Nasser Sahab said, the world was relatively a bit more quiet, and a lot of people said that Hazur was being pessimistic. It's unlikely that there's going to be a war. How have you found the people's feedback change over the course of the years?
Well, there's an example of a US senator who actually said this so much, and His Holiness has mentioned this example many times, who actually said that he believed that His Holiness was being pessimistic, because at that time it did not seem like the things which His Holiness was saying could actually materialize. However, that same senator, many years later, acknowledged that he was wrong, and these things are true. Now, what we have to realize is His Holiness is a spiritual and religious leader. He's not claiming to be a geopolitical analyst. Yet, rarely, if anyone in those days, was saying that the world would materialize in the way it is. And we have to understand, why was His Holiness, with such passion, with such intensity, with such repetition, kept on repeating this message? And we go back to the purpose of the peace conference. Islam means peace. Islam seeks to establish peace at all levels, the local and international level. And His Holiness is essentially saying that based on Islam's teaching, the world has tried many models of peace around the world, of different types, of different institutions. Clearly, they're not working. If they were, we would not be escalating into further divisions. And His Holiness is saying, here's an alternative. This is what Islam is saying, the religion which is based on peace, which has established peace over decades and centuries. This is what it's providing. And that model, if it's followed, it's so logical and such a pathway to peace, it would establish peace. Now, people attend the Peace Symposium, and many of them from all walks of life often acknowledge, and they do appreciate, and they are inspired by the words of His Holiness. And they say, and I've met many guests myself, and you would have heard it on MTA and published in different publications, that truly the message His Holiness is giving hits to the heart of the matter and does solve the issues. Now, we're not a political community, we're a spiritual community. His Holiness is carrying out his duty to convey a blueprint and a message. We have no power or governance. It's up to now those people in influence to take that and to try that model.
And over the 19 years or more that Hazur has been warning about this, we've seen the conditions getting worse. And even this year's Peace Symposium, Hazur said that some people may ask, what is the point of keep on reminding and keep on having these? But Hazur said, Islam teaches that you should relentlessly strive for peace. Nasser Khan, how have you seen Hazur's message change over the years? Or has it changed? Has it gotten more and more stark?
I think it's been timely from the beginning. He's timed it in such a way that at the beginning, the attack was on religion, not just on Islam, but on religion as a whole, that religion is the cause of the disorder in this world. So Hazur addressed that right at the beginning. And then over the years, you've seen the far right raising its ugly head throughout the world. And the politicians that have come into power over this 20-year period have ignited this whole rhetoric about attacking religions. And therefore, it's become a war of religions in a sense.
Have you ever invited those kind of politicians?
Absolutely, absolutely. And some of them have turned.
Right.
I mean, even in front of our own eyes, we've seen some of those politicians who were saying, well, I think your Khalifa's totally talking about war all the time and we're walking into Third World War. And now they're saying, he was right. He was right and we were wrong. Hazur's always addressed it from the point of view of injustice. And what he has said is that as long as there's injustice in the world, there will be disorder. And so the root cause is injustice. And the more we see the extremist views coming to leadership, then that injustice becomes more forefront in politics.
I think also one thing is interesting is that Hazur is what we believe the embodiment of the Islamic teachings today in terms of following the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. There's a famous verse in the Quran where the Holy Prophet was praying so much for the sake of saving humanity that a verse was revealed saying, are you going to grieve yourself to death in the agony for the world, the people who were opposing the Holy Prophet? His Holiness is the servant of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, the successor of the promised Messiah who was the true devotee of the Holy Prophet. And what we see, even if he is talking about saving war, is that true compassion for humanity, that true pain that he wants humanity to be saved. And Islam is a religion, which His Holiness has explained, it's not sufficient in Islam to just cater for yourself and your own needs. Islam requires you to take care of your neighbors beside you, your neighbors in other countries. So by His Holiness repeatedly giving this message for 20 years, it shows a reflection of true Islam, which is pain, love, sympathy and compassion for all people, whether they are Jewish, Christian, Buddhist and even atheist. So this is actually coming from a point of pain and agony and sympathy and compassion for humankind.
No, of course, but if nothing is changing, if it's just getting worse, do you think it's still worth carrying these on? Either one?
Well, you can't stop. As it says, in Islamic, the teaching is to consistently persist in bringing good to the people. And peace is the ultimate aim of all human societies. So I think His Holiness has done that. He's carried the message of Islam in its true, purest form, which is to bring peace to the world. And also, I think the misconception in the West, and it's very much pronounced now with the people that you've mentioned earlier in your introduction, that message of Islam being a religion of terror, of war, etc. Here he is giving the actual true picture, and it's very much needed, because actually, if it wasn't for the peace conference, there isn't another international leader that's bringing communities together and then promoting Islam in this true and honest way. So I think we are very blessed that we're able to have His Holiness here, and we're able to hold the peace conference, and we must continue to do that as long as His Holiness, God gives him a long life and good health, that we're able to hold this event and get this message out to the world that there is this person who speaks for the Muslim world and gives a message, the true message of Islam, and therefore that image in people's minds, which is created by these extremist mullahs around the world, and people like ISIS and Boko Haram and people of the kind there, that is not Islam. And the real Islam is the one that His Holiness is promoting.
I remember addressed it very strongly in around 2013, or when ISIS Daesh was quite at its height. You want to comment?
I think we can, in a nutshell, if we were to explain it, His Holiness mentioned this, that there's a famous saying that you should love for others what you love for yourself. And His Holiness is coming from that position that he sees something which can give peace internally and externally, which is a blueprint that Islam has given, and he wants to convey that. Secondly, the attacks on Islam, the misrepresentation of Islam as an extremist, backward religion, that's something that as true Muslims, or as a representative of Islam, His Holiness feels pained, and so do we as members of the community. And he wants to right those wrongs, explain actually Islam is a beautiful religion. Islam is something that is protective of other people's rights, that gives justice and equity. And so out of compassion for humanity, plus out of a deference for wanting to defend Islam, which is clearly being defamed for political reasons, that's why His Holiness is carrying out his duty to the best of possible. Now, if people don't follow it, because after all, we don't have any power or governance, then God forbid in future, they'll look back in history and see that there was a community and a leader who was reminding them. But our job can only be to convey. We can't force people. It's up to people to then accept and to follow that message.
And speaking of people who've got suspicions about Islam, on the same day of this peace conference, far-right Islamophobe Tommy Robinson led a rally of 60,000 people in London calling for an end to Islam. It featured quite sickening chants and demonstrations. Let me just read out a few of the quotes from that demonstration. One speaker said, "It's time for many Muslims to leave the country." Another one said, "It's not too late to get Islam out of every single official office in this country." And another quote was that we do not want to live under Sharia law. I don't think we're living under Sharia law. I don't think we're anywhere near that. But what did you make of these things?
I think there's an irony which I'd like to mention is that the flag of St. George, obviously the English flag, is being waved proudly. St. George, an article was done by a team member, was actually of Palestinian descent. St. George never spoke English. St. George never came to England.
Right.
St. George was a foreigner. If he returned today, he would be an immigrant and a minority. Similarly, you might have seen images of crosses being given and picked up.
Crusaders as well.
Jesus, peace be upon him, was from the Middle East. He was a Palestinian. In fact, most of the disciples, and for early Christianity, they were from around that area. They were not, Europeans, etc. So the irony is not lost that, and then moreover, on top of that, you might have seen images of showing, they were doing things like, which are almost nonsensical, like they were showing people were showing bacon and pork. Now, what's interesting is that on the one side, they're wanting to uphold the rights of Jewish people, but Orthodox Jews strictly forbid pork. So I believe there is a lack of understanding and education that is clearly being conveyed, because some of the things they are purporting go against their own values that they're also trying to purport at the same time. On the other side, there's clearly a misrepresentation of Islam. His Holiness has mentioned this many times in all the peace conferences in the last 20 years, that most of the writers who covered Islam, the European writers, covered it as a barbaric religion that was spread by force. Whereas the reality is, Islam never allowed any fighting by force. It only allowed a defense of all religions, including Jews, Christians, Hindus, people of all religions, and even of no faith. Islam, so this misrepresentation of Islam is what's being promoted in these rallies. But actually, that is not true Islam.
The rally got quite a lot of coverage. The Peace Symposium last week didn't get as much coverage. What do you make of that?
I remember once, as we mentioned, that a journalist asked him, you say so many wonderful things, how come we have never heard of your community? Or we don't hear of your community as much as we should? He said, because peace does not sell. Aggression sells, extremism sells. And the papers and the media generally sensationalize these things to a point where the voices of peace are drowned out. But I think the important thing right now is that the world is in desperate need of someone who speaks out for humanity, for bringing the basic human instincts of loving thy neighbor, of putting peace before war, feeding the poor.
By the Christian values as well, which these protests are purporting to represent.
Absolutely, and this is why many of the faith leaders that come to our peace conferences, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, they all echo that. They say, absolutely, this is what we need.
I think it's so important to mention, because there's traditional media, and then there's media now where anyone can go and upload. And there's a large number of people who go and just create their own content. It's interesting that when you go beyond the traditional media, you're saying that it's not a united body of this far right. Within the far right, you can see many videos where there's anti-Semitism, even amongst them. There's people who are against, and that's why we say it's not just about standing up for Muslims. These same people who are being Islamophobic today will be the people who also discriminate against Jews and other people. Similarly, they interviewed some people and they asked them, why are you here, some young people? And they admitted, we're just here because we're bored. Some other people said, we don't even like the leader. Yes, there were many people who were supporting them, but it's not like one monolith. Within them, there are differing types of people, some who are a bit bigoted, but there are some people who, if you speak to them kindly, they can understand as well.
Because some of them have got quite legitimate concerns about the economy, about immigration potentially, but why is it that, it seems like Islamophobia has become trendy? It's fine to mock Muslims. Why do you feel that is?
You have to look at it from the perspective of even the beginning of the 30s, when we had the extremism, right-wing extremism in Europe. And all the ingredients that were there at that time were to do with economics. Economics was the driving force, not religion, they were Christians. They were Christian extremists. But they saw the fact that the public was suffering under enormous pressure of the reparations in Germany. And they've singled out the scapegoats. The scapegoats were the Jews at the time. So we're in a way, this is a wake-up call for good moderate Muslims and for other moderate people to unite in the way that if we don't, then these extremist parties will raise their ugly heads and they will become a source in politics, and therefore that populist vote will bring people in like Farage and Trump, and then you'll see the consequence of that. But I think there are enough good people in this world to recognize the evil of these people.
I think His Holiness has mentioned it, that in the speech that was done in the peace conference, that Islam is being used as a scapegoat for other issues. Are there, for example, let's take immigration. Are there issues with immigrants? Yes, some immigrants may misbehave, and His Holiness has mentioned that the hand that gives is better than the hand that takes. His Holiness has been quite balanced and said, yes, of course, there are some immigrants who might, just want to come to take, and that's not right. They should come with a spirit to give. And so he has covered that as well. At the same time, the question is that if we say that we are in a media which is balanced and presents both sides, then yes, there are some small minority of people who are misbehaving, and we say they should be condemned and whatever the law is should be carried out. But on the other side, why did it not mention that if there's only 6% of Muslims in the UK, why is it that in the NHS, for example, according to some estimates, there are 30 to 45,000 doctors making up 15% of the NHS population, where they're overrepresented? Why did not mention that on average, every Muslim is giving 4 times more than the average donor in charity?
The most charitable
Why did it not mention that Muslims give over 70 billion annually towards the economy? And so what they're doing is they're taking a very small minority of people who might be misbehaving, but they're purposely grouping them with the wider group of very hardworking immigrants who are working hard. And what's the result of that? There was a video you might have seen recently where a girl who was actually born in the UK, I don't know if she was Muslim, but she was definitely South Asian. She may have been Muslim, and she happened to be passing through London. And the crowds are saying, smack her, smack her. And she's like, I'm born in the UK. And they're like, we don't care. So what's happening now is a grouping of everyone. And they're not presenting another side of all this actual contribution towards society. So the real thing is, present both sides and let people decide. But when you deliberately skewer and don't present one side, if you look at a lot of the mainstream interviews with people at the protests, they're clearly just parroting views that are being presented to them without further research.
Yeah, and Nasser Khan Sahib, a lot of Ahmadi Muslims are immigrants, and at the Bethel Mosque you hold many charitable kind of initiatives. Tell us a bit about that. Like, how much does the community give back to the country?
I mean, again, it goes back to the ethos of the community, which is to always give, not take. And you'll find this in the Ahmadi communities throughout the world. I mean, I've traveled in the Far East, in Africa, and North America. And wherever you go, you'll see the same the community spirit amongst Ahmadi Muslims, certainly. And you'll see the Battle of Two here. We have constant, even today, we've got 400 or 500 school children here. We reach out to the schools to teach them about the teachings of Islam, the pure, beautiful, peaceful teachings of Islam. And we reach out to the local community. The building here is often used for fundraising for the church. We've used it for fundraising for the hospital. We've used this for COVID injections. We use this for raising for relief around the world for when there's events around the world, that we raise lots and lots for charity. So this is and litter picking around the country.
Multiplied across all the mosques in the UK, right?
Across the world. Yeah. This is happening across the world. So we have that as part of the teaching of the community, that we have to do this for the local community.
And do you ever experience backlash or Islamophobia?
It was here. There's extremists everywhere. There are racists everywhere in the world. And you have to win them over. You have to break down barriers. You have to reach out to people. And by the grace of God, we are doing that. And lots of people change their minds very quickly when they see how the community works and how we reach out and invite people to come and see how Islam in action, as it were.
Have either of you ever spoken directly to a far-right activist or Islamophobe and have...
Specifically in the UK or anywhere?
Anywhere you can say.
We did a video on the Review of Religions called I Am Muslim, Ask Me Anything. We travelled to 22 states in America, including the Bible Belt and everywhere. So yes, I did come across. And there's 2 or 3 different types. One type will not even want to engage with you, and will just start shouting and not listening. And there are people like that. However, amongst them, there are people who, if you explain to them, they do begin to at least listen. Not all of them are bad people. And His Holiness, this is why, if you look at the recent messages of His Holiness, in fact, all his messages, but specifically because of this time, his message is treat hatred with kindness, treat opposition with warmth. And often I have experienced myself, and many Muslims and Ahmadis would have experienced, that some people who were opposed, after some time, they actually came back and publicly said that actually, although I'm an atheist, or although I am whatever I'm following, these people are genuine, and these people are something worthy to be listened. So, but there is His Holiness has put responsibility on Muslims as well. So although we feel the media has a responsibility, because His Holiness mentioned in one peace conference that this media propaganda can be the oxygen which fuels even extremism, which is being done not only against non-Muslims, but sometimes more towards Muslims themselves. So that, but at the same time, His Holiness has said that, and he explained this recently, that actions speak louder than words. We do convey through the media and through different ways our true version of Islam. However, if you're not acting it, no one will believe you. And that's why in schools, in the workplace, and even amongst your neighbors, when you present a good example, that does work. I'll give you just one quick example. His Holiness has mentioned so much, even in peace conferences and mosque openings, the rights of neighbors in Islam. Now, there was a scheme here in the UK based on His Holiness guidance that at least give gifts to 10 of your neighbors. So in a place where I moved some time ago, my previous accommodation, the people around where we moved in the flats or apartments were very suspicious. They weren't speaking to us or my wife who was wearing hijab. They would walk past us even though we would smile at them, and it was a very tense situation. We tried to implement this guidance of His Holiness. My wife made some cakes and cupcakes and I started giving it to them. And just by the small gesture and repeatedly giving it a few times, suddenly they were smiling. Suddenly the kids were coming and playing in our house. Suddenly they were giving us gifts. And so whilst we're not just, it's not just a victim mentality that we're saying that everyone else is at fault, although there are genuine faults. His Holiness has also put responsibility on us that we go out and we present our example as much as possible in whatever area we are in. And that does have a bigger effect than just words.
Have you had experience?
Well, I can resonate with all of this, Amer is just saying, because obviously I came here in the 60s and I can still recall in the windows of some of the shops and the houses that you'd have no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. I still recall that.
Wow.
So prejudice was there. It's not just by the Muslims coming here that the prejudice is. The prejudice is there against different people at different times. So right now it's against Muslims. You have to reach out to these people, and as Amer just says, you have to make your effort in loving your neighbor and converting that hatred into love. It's very difficult. You know, it's a virtue that very few people can actually rise above and do that. But this is this teaching of Islam. It's not something new. 1500 years ago, the Holy Prophet said, this is what you have to do. You have to reach out. And it's only at the time of extreme situations like this that we're facing now, that we're on the precipice of a world war. And as we mentioned, we're actually in it. It's actually started. That we have to even make efforts, even more brazen efforts to make sure that we don't fall back on this. And everybody, like-minded people, whether they're Muslims, non-Muslims, people of no faith, but they have to make it, and good people have to come together in this sort of scenario where the world is facing so many difficulties. And as I said, extremism can only be fought by love. There's no other way of doing it. And a lot of people, there's very small numbers. You say 60,000. We're in a 70 million population. It's a very small number.
They have a loud voice, though. They get more coverage.
So you have to reach out to the average person, and if each neighbor has 10 neighbors either side is happy with you, then it says that God is happy with you. This is what the Islamic teaching is. So we have to do that, all of us.
Well, I think in terms of what you're saying, that they worry about Sharia law, again, they misrepresent it. There are some groups who misrepresent, but they don't represent the wider community. In the same way, if any other religious extremist groups perform an act, we don't attribute it to that religion. We know that the religions are true in the source. If they knew the true history of Islam in Europe, they would actually want Islam. Now, from the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings on him, time, he established Charter of Medina, where he gave Jews and Christians a right and said, if a Jewish worship place is attacked, we will defend it. If a Christian worship place is attacked, we will defend it. A Christian who came, he offered the mosque to pray in it. In the time of Caliph Amer, when he went and he took over Jerusalem, there was not a single Jewish person present there. He brought the Jewish people back. Similarly, in ancient Iraq, in Baghdad in the 8th century, it was a center of Jewish learning. In Andalusia, the Ottoman Empire, you found flourishing harmony in Europe. I was recently in Germany, and a leading German white professor who covers those periods said there might have been some slight problematic periods, but if you compare, by and large, the Muslims treated the Jewish people far better than any Europeans done in European history. And not my words, the words of a leading European white academic PhD professor. And so if you look at the history of so-called Sharia law, it's the real history, apart from, yes, there were some periods of problems. It was a history of flourishing harmony between religions, a history of great secular advancements in terms of algebra, trigonometry, coffee, the camera, Ibn Nafis al-Khawarizmi, who invented things that we still use today. Now these things, I'm a student of literature. I had to study into history of Europe and literature of Europe. They never mentioned this history of Europe. They never mentioned this so-called Sharia law where actually it was a law which actually gave people their rights.
Yeah. It's very much a forgotten history now, which we kind of need to revive, isn't it? But as you've heard, not everyone supports such division and hatred. There is still some hope. And some guests at the Peace Symposium who witnessed Islamic teachings and Muslim hospitality firsthand had a resounding message for those accusing Islam of being the cause of the problems in Britain today.
Divisions come from a lack of understanding, and helping foster that understanding and that camaraderie is really important, and calling for peace at a time of intense division is obviously the right way forward.
Islam is a religion of peace and has a message of peace, and I wish that was a message that more people understood, that it's not a religion that wants war. And I think it's really ironic that you've got the leader of the biggest Christian country in the world waging a war, and yet being really anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim, and you've got the leader of the Ahmadi Muslim community writing to world leaders asking for peace, and yet people demonise Islam so much.
Most people treat other people like human beings, and I think a small rally of small-minded people isn't the majority of people. I think people can get misinformed and wound up by, untruths, but I think in general, no hatred can survive experience. So I think bringing people together stops that fear or hatred that comes from ignorance.
Nasser Khan Sahab, some beautiful messages there. Is this what you normally see at Peace Symposium?
Yeah, I think that's probably, I can say that's 20 years experience. This is the response of most people once they've attended.
Yeah. But is it the case that you're just preaching to the choir? Is your message reaching who it needs to?
I would have said that a few years ago. In the beginning, I would have said, yes, the people that attend are the sort of people that have already been, mesmerized by Hazur and by the community. Yeah. But I think in the recent years, as was mentioned by Amer, the social media explosion around the world, and at the fingertips, everybody has this access to social media. I think now the message is going out across the world to all sorts of people. So I don't think it's wasted at all. I think it's now a message that's going out to people who are not sure of what's happening with Islam, and when they see this, they think, oh, there is a form of Islam. If this is true Islam, I'm interested.
Okay. Any final words, Amer?
I think I had a guest who came who was the head of a neurology publication. He'd never been to a mosque before. He travelled from 8 hours to be there. And MTA International interviewed her afterwards. And they said, what did you take from His Holiness's message? And she said, what I took from it is to never give up. So in answer to your question, even this guest acknowledged that this is what she took away, that regardless of the hurdle ahead and the obstacles and the seemingly impossible nature of the task to try and encourage people to remove their egos, remove injustice and inequity, His Holiness's message is to never give up, to keep on making an effort. And regardless of obviously the opposition to Islam has a lot more resources. They have a lot more control of the media. But our job is to use those same tools in a peaceful, non-violent way, using intellectual arguments and an example, to keep on conveying our message. And the rest is, as His Holiness has mentioned many times, even the prophets of God were told that your job is only to convey the message. His Holiness has mentioned, and the prophets of God, even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says in the Quran, it's God's job to then, turn people's hearts. So our role as a religious, non-political community, following the Khalifa of the time, is to keep on conveying the message, keep on being loving and peaceful to people, keep on being loyal to our nation, which we live in, and we do show that loyalty, as Nasser Khan Sahab knows that in every one of our events, along with the flag of our community, we raise the flag of our country. And it's not beyond just the mosques that we mentioned before. We have auxiliary communities, including a women-only community, an elders community and a youth community. They're doing some phenomenal work to go out and help the elderly. They raise millions in charity every year, which goes to non-Muslim groups as well. We do blood drives. So we will keep on doing our task through things like the Peace Symposium and other. His Holiness is leading that thing. Now it's up to people whether they accept that or not.
Yeah. It's a very beautiful, hopeful message to end on. Nasser Khan Sahab and Amer Safir Sahab, thank you for joining us. That's all that we have time for today. Until next time, thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.